I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your 3-minute cattle market update for Wednesday, June the 21st. And on Tuesday, the big news opened up in the morning with an ad of feedlots for sale, and not just any feedlots, but the biggest, Five Rivers cattle feeding owned by JBS, and almost 1 million head of cattle capacity for the feedlot spread across several states, all over the five area feeding region and beyond. But it really threw the board for a loop. JBS has had so much trouble with corruption, and they've got a big fine to pay, and they were into payoffs and a lot of stuff that really is being hard for them, and surprising that they've been able to stay together. But they were afraid that maybe they might have to close some of their slaughter facilities here in the United States, and thinking that would really be tough on the market. But it hasn't come out that way yet. It just appears that they're going to sell their feeding part of their corporate investments there. But that's big news, because JBS and then Five Rivers is huge in your cattle feeding industry. They're big procurement, big buyers of feeder cattle. Anytime you're feeding that many cattle, they handle about 10% of the cattle that are bought up, and you just think that that's a big deal. But it just depends on how this shakes out. If they sell it all in one piece and it stays centralized and they have their same procurement model and everything, it's not going to change much. If they spread it all out and sell it to different investors, then it's probably going to change things quite a bit, as they might go into different areas to buy their feeder cattle. There was a big learning curve for Five Rivers whenever JBS bought it. They changed up their procurement. They kind of had a big target on them. They were a punching bag for a lot of crooked order buyers. They ended up paying a lot more for cattle than what they were getting. They ended up getting a lot of used cattle, cattle that were high risk, that they didn't think that they were getting. And it took them a while to really get into the sink of buying feeder cattle the way that we do here in the United States. But they've gotten through that. They have learned those hard lessons, so it's a little surprising that they were ready to sell that, and maybe they just want to loosen up some money to shore up some other deals they've got. But it'll be interesting to see who comes in there and buys that, and whether they separate it out or keep it all together. But you can bet whoever they sell that to, they're going to have them in some kind of a contractual agreement where where JBS will continue to get the fat cattle that come out of those feedlots. They're not going to sell those feedlots and then have to go in there and actively compete for the cattle that go on the show list there. It's going to be similar to the way that Cargill got rid of Caprock feeding and sold it in, and then they've still got those cattle tied up. But it is a little bit curious to me that we're seeing all these corporate packing plants get rid of their feeding subsidiary, and I don't know if that has anything to do with the change of administration, if they might go in there and do some updates to the P&S Act or things like that. But it'll be interesting to see. But and until we hear more news, we don't really know a whole lot about it. But those cattle are going to get fed somewhere, and those feedlots will stay full until they get them sold, and it'll be interesting to see who's interested in buying them. And it may just be money coming from somewhere else, and they just change the name like they do a lot of times on these corporate feeding outfits. But you look at the weighted average for last week's fat cattle trade. The live steers averaged 130.12, down 5.95 for the week. Your dress sales, we were talking about late in the week that we'd heard some sales as low as 205 or maybe 203 on a dress basis, but we didn't have all that confirmed. Well, he did have some more of them, and ended up with a weighted average on dress steers at 205.94, which was down $12.42 compared to the previous week, and that is a big hunk. And a little bit surprising, because the bulk of your dress sales are in the northern plains, which those cattle typically have a higher quality grade than the ones in the southern plains. And we know that these packers have been wanting the higher grading cattle because we have such a giant spread between choice and select, but still knocked that market $12.42 compared to about $6 on the live sales. But you look at the big news over the weekend was your World Livestock Auctioneer contest at Pay's Public Auction Yards in Billings, Montana. Had a big sale there, 6,100 head there, and of the 31 well-deserving contestants there, they really had a good one rise to the top there. Brian Curlis from Pittsfield, Illinois. He's a guy I know for a long time. They're going to love having him as a representative for the next year, being the world champion and kind of going out and being a spokesman for the marketing industry and livestock. He's distinguished, he's well-spoken, he's a gentleman, and he knows the value of cattle. I couldn't have picked anybody any better, and I know there's other people that could have filled that too, but Brian is certainly deserving of that. And anybody that has him come to their market to appear and sell cattle and be a spokesman for Livestock Marketing Association or for the industry are going to be pleased to have him come, because he's just a super nice guy. I know several years ago they were having the Missouri State Championship through Ellen May for the Livestock Auctioneer Champion in Missouri, and they were having that in Palmyra, Missouri at F&T Livestock Market. I got to be a judge at that particular contest there and showed up at Palmyra, hadn't been there for a while. And he was selling cattle because that's his home sale barn. He sells there every week. And I was wishing that he had been in the contest, and I figured the contest was probably going to be over already. But he wasn't allowed to compete because that was his home sale. And if he hadn't have been barred from competing because that was his home sale, he would have been tops in my contest, in my judge book there. And I picked him to win this year, and sure enough he did, but that's great for him. But congratulations to Brian Curlis there. But you look at that sale there at Pay's in Billings, they had 6,100 head. You got all the buyers there. If they're going to show off a little bit, they're going to do it there. There was all the buying power in the world. You got to remember they're way up there in Billings, Montana. It's a big freight to get those cattle anywhere to a major, feeding area. There's some feedlots around there. They feed a lot of cows around there, but to get them down to the 5-area feeding region where you got a lot more pen space and a lot more corporate type demand, you've got quite a haul on them. But you look at some quotes out of there on some steers weighing 8.5 to 9, and these aren't going to be green grass yearlings. Most of those yearlings are going to have been backgrounded and won't be as much value to feed because they're not going to go to the feed like a green yearling would. But they had 277 head of those steers weighing 8.5 to 9, bring 148.25 to 152.75 with a weighted average on those 850 to 900 pound steers at 150.85, and that's about $1 better than what Superior was selling similar weight steers green off summer grass for delivery here in about a month. So that's really a good sale for those steers standing in the ring in Billings, Montana. That similar heifers that size bring 140.18 on the average. But you look at some other activity early in the week. On Monday, they did have a few feedlot sales there. We got weak sisters again here on early in the week, just like we did last week. We had that big string of cattle sell $5 lower than the previous week. Well, look at some sales we already have this week. About 1,200 fat cattle sold in Iowa, mostly at 122, which would be, wherever you want to pick that ended price, it should be $4 to $6 lower. In Nebraska, they had a 500 head string sell on a dress basis at 199, so that's sure, $4 to $6 lower on a dress basis too. But how the rest of these guys that sell negotiated are going to try to hold any market position when people are coming in on a Monday and just pulling the rug out from under them. I don't understand how we're going to be able to keep that if this trend continues of puking cattle early in the week, and then nobody else has any kind of leverage at all to try to hold the market on their cattle. But on Tuesday late, real-time index on Beef Market Central, 144.72 for an 800-pound steer. That's actually $1.48 higher than it was on Monday. You had some more Northern Plains type sales selling cattle a little higher than your big southern or lower Midwest sales that sold on Monday, and those would have included Oklahoma City, which had 6,700 head, sold their feeders $3 to $6 lower. Joplin had 4,700 head on Monday. All their feeders under 700 were $5 to $8 lower. They had a few big yearlings sell near steady, and that's kind of the way it's going to be now. If we see any yearlings show up at a sale barn for the next several weeks, you know, it's hot here in the summer. It's not real good, efficient to sell those big heavy cattle because they're going to shrink, lose a lot of weight. But your buyers are needing cattle like that. And so when we see some yearlings show up at a sale, they're going to sell pretty good. The calves and the middleweight cattle, not so good. But at Joplin, the quality was down a little bit on Monday because they've got a big wean vac value-added special sale on Thursday at 7:30 in the morning, expecting around 6,000 head. Those will all be long-time weaned and under a preconditioned program that's approved by Joplin Regional Stockyards there. But you look on Tuesday at El Reno at the calf sale, OKC West had about 1,800 head, and just like you figured they would be, it's hot and all your markets are bearish. Their calves sold $5 to $10 lower. Another quote had there on Tuesday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon out of Phillips, South Dakota. You see on Beef Market Central there, that's 71 head of steers, weighed 834 at 150.75. That's 3 minutes, and we'll talk to you on Friday.